We opened the show up with Ken Dodd and happiness. Wasn't it a bit of a bad week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? I mean, in a happy way.
Yeah.
But Ken Dodd, I was reading all the twits and I call them twits, but tweets.
Yeah.
And, people really upset that Ken Dodd, comedy legend, another one that has sadly gone from the realms of entertainment.
Well, in that era, I think we talked about it briefly, didn't we? But, there's a few left, isn't there? You probably got Des O'Connor. Then, obviously, a few days later, poor old Jim Bowen died.
Yeah.
Probably there. But then, who would you say after that? Des O'Connor, Jimmy Tarbuck, I suppose. Who else? Who else after that? In that sort of
that little gang is gradually just disappearing into the skies, aren't they?
But
now?
I think he was a bit unique. He was just non-stop, every second. Every second there was a joke, every second. And you have a look at an audience with Ken Dodd. If anyone wants to learn about comedy, just watch that show.
Definitely,
Ken Dodd.
Yeah.
And people were just laughing, and as they're trying to recover, another one comes in, and bodies are just distorted laughing. They can't.
I'll tell you what's quite interesting as well, and we've spoke about this on the show a few times before. The comedy changes, doesn't it, over the years? And there was a lot of the comics, as Gary and you'll know, Johnny, that they admired him and they looked up to him and learnt a lot from him. Probably the humour nowadays, I don't think a lot of people probably get that, and it's real interesting, isn't it? Because it's like that wit, isn't it? You know, and like cleverness and stupidness, isn't it? But
it was just stupidness.
It amazed me. He was like 90, wasn't he? Was he 90? Yeah. And he still had that really like young, sharp humour. Yeah. Even up until when he came out of hospital, there was an interview on TV, and he was still fanging everyone, still making jokes, ready to go back out and tour again.
Yeah.
But
that's like your old mate Normal Wisdom. He was doing the same apparently in the
cartwheels.
Home
he was doing cartwheels still and everything. We'll actually be speaking to a couple of people later on that knew Ken Dodd better than any of us.
Yeah,
which would be great.
Yeah.
So they'll have a few little stories to tell us. I'm sure.
We've got coming up Keith Simmons, friend of the show.
He
Simmons.
Is good old guy, Keith.
Keith's worked with everybody. Even worked with me nan. We never worked with me nan, but he has worked with everybody. And he always got some great stories. And
he will have definitely.
And then, again, another friend of the show, Duncan Norvelle.
Yep, he's coming on.
Was at Ken Dodd's 90th birthday last year as well.
Yeah, both. Yeah. So be good to have a little chat with him with some of their best stories from him. But I think as well, when he used to do the theatre show, it was quite interesting. He used to come out, didn't he, and start the gag and bring his flask and sandwiches because he'd be there till 12.
Yeah.
People having to go get their taxis. Now he's still theatres must have loved him, the tech crew, and everyone, but it's still. But hey, that takes some doing, doesn't it?
There's going to be some big. There's going to be some. I don't know, good conversations about.
There will
about old Ken Dodd today. And also, so we're going to mention Ken Dodd, and also we lost another one as well this week. Another great comedian, I suppose, and presenter.
He was. Yeah.
Remember this one? Who was this? Jim Bowen. We lost Jim Bowen as well. Another one. And now this is a thing for you. I mean, call me controversial.
You're controversial.
Okay. Now, this is not controversial. I hope it's not controversial. But Jim Bowen, to me, again, was Mr. Sunday Night when we were kids growing up.
Great,
right?
Yeah, brilliant.
If you're going to pick a week to go, right, he's picked the same week as Ken Dodd and Stephen Hawkins.
Yeah.
You know, and really, to me, there's a lot of people going, I like Jim Bowen.
Yeah.
I like Ken Dodd. So to me, I was a bit upset about Jim Bowen going.
Yeah.
Bit upset about Ken Dodd going. Bit upset about Stephen Hawkins going. Yeah. But if I think about it logically, I was more upset about Doddy. To me, as great as Stephen Hawkins was and what he done for the I don't know, the world in his scientist facts and whatever he discovered, I think Ken Dodd was amazing.
I think probably.
Who affected you more?
I think probably why that happens as well. Ever since we've been born, Ken Dodd's been there, hasn't he? And I can remember Jim Bowen, obviously, for years, like you said, in the 90s, or I was told about him. But and then Stephen Hawkins later on in her life. But Ken Dodd's just always been there, isn't he? He's like one of those people you expect to always be there forever. So I know what you mean. He's sort of he stands out, doesn't he? Really.
Your parents, when they was young, they knew I knew Ken Dodd.
Yeah. And the thing about Ken Dodd, we've gone back to Ken again now. He wasn't just a great comic, was he? He was a great singer as well, Ken Dodd.
Yeah. That first song you played.
Have you seen the interview with the Beatles with him?
Yeah. It's all been being played on TV.
Beatles, and he's still there. And you see John, who unfortunately got killed. George's gone, and Ken Dodd's there. And he went on another 40, 50 years.
I do think, though, if you look at pictures, when you've seen Ken Dodd interviewed in his later days, I think Paul McCartney's turned into Ken Dodd. Have you seen Paul McCartney looks like Ken Dodd now?
No, I haven't.
Amazing. Google some pictures.
We'll have a look.
No, I'll tell you who does look like Ken Dodd. Theresa May. If she had black hair, she'd look like Ken Dodd.
Anyway.
Actually, maybe if Ken Dodd had gone to the EU negotiations, he probably could have got us a better deal.
He actually would have got us a better deal. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So listen, we have got all that coming your way later. Some great stories about Ken Dodd. Hopefully, maybe some about. But well, again, Duncan Norvelle was the Duncan. Here's one for you.
Yeah.
How it all crosses over. Duncan Norvelle was
Let
the
him tell you
highest
later.
scoring. Yeah, and he'll talk about it, celebrity person on Bullseye.
Right.
So we'll talk about that. He was great.
Did he win a speedboat?
No, he was doing it for charity. Where the money went to like a good charity cause.
Yeah.
And that's, and that made me laugh. Years ago they'd win that money, wouldn't they? And win about £180, they'd double it.
I know.
So we did say earlier on in the show we are going to be trying to catch up about Ken Dodd. We have spoke about Ken Dodd quite a little bit so far, and because it's all very relevant at the moment, and we have our friend of the show, don't we, Paul?
We do, Mr. Keith Simmons coming up.
So can we give him a call?
Yeah, we're going to press the button and go for it. Here we go.
Let's get him on. Let's get him live on the phone. We must see the ringing tone and everything today on the phone.
Let's pretend we're posh. When we phone him.
Yes. Let's see if he's there. So Keith Simmons, a legend of the show business world, and hopefully we have him live on.
Hello, Mr. Simmons. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good,
how are you?
Good. Yeah, good. I've got Mr. Goodmaze and Mr. Johnny Wald with us today.
Hello, Keith.
Fantastic. Hi, guys.
Hello, Keith. How are you, my old friend?
Very good, thanks.
Friend of the show, Keith Simmons, back here. He was on, unfortunately, Keith, this is really, we love you as a bloke. We love you dearly. But unfortunately, the only thing it seems to be when we lose a comedy legend in the business, it seems to be the time we ring you up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Not only for that.
No, I do a talk called Name Dropping where I talk about a lot of the famous people I've worked with, and someone said to me not long ago, it's not so much a talk, it's more a séance because they're all not with us anymore. What's the trouble?
Well, Keith Simmons, if anybody on listening to our station has heard Keith on our show before, because Keith is a great act. He was around in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. He's been around from the 60s.
Thanks for that.
No,
pushing your luck.
He's been around from the 60s, and he's a great double act, the Simmons and Simmons. But what a great entertainer, still doing it up and down the country, writing pantomimes, and a genuinely funny man, but an absolute lovely man as well. That's what I love about you, Keith.
Be careful, Keith. He's after borrowing a tenner.
I ain't.
Yeah, I'm going to say thank you, Gary. Could I have all that in writing, please?
He was actually talking really good about you with the lead up, and then you answered the phone. If you hadn't have answered the phone, I think you'd have probably got knighted.
Let me quickly introduce you as well, Keith. To in our studio, we have our co-presenter, Mr. Johnny Wald. This is Johnny.
Hello, Keith.
How are you, Johnny? All right.
Yeah,
good, thank you.
I was here when you done your previous interview, and it was just great listening, mate. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks.
So, let's get back to the nuts and bolts of this reason why we rung up our great friend of the show, Keith the Legend Simmons, MBE, OBE. All right, sir, Keith. See what I'm doing? I'm going for it.
Keith could be like our showbiz correspondent, couldn't he? Out and about, like Mr. Johnny, and that couldn't he?
He could be.
Wonderful, great, love to.
Okay, Keith Simmons. It has been a bit. We're just talking before. It's been a bit of a rubbish week, really, in the respect that we lost a couple of comedy greats and a scientist great, I would call him. I'm not sure if he was a comedian, but I said it was a bit of a bad week for Jim Bowen to pass away when Stephen Hawkins and Ken Dodd went, I think. Was a bit of
that's right.
A weird
Unbelievable.
one. But, Keith, you've been around business. You've worked with the legends. Ken Dodd, can you tell us anything? Did you know you knew Ken? I'm sure.
Yeah, knew him very well. In fact, he phoned me amazingly just a few days before he died.
Oh, wow.
And we had about a 10-minute chat about old days, and he sounded quite good, actually. I really thought he was going to pull through and be okay. And Fran and I, my wife Fran, we said we'd go up and see him, and of course, a few days later he'd left us. So very, very sad. But no, I did pantomime with him in 1981. Did two summer seasons, one in Southport, one in Scarborough. Did a radio series with him on Radio 2 called Ken Dodd's Palace of Laughter, and literally hundreds of one-nighters. I mean, we did so much work with him. This is when I worked with my brother Alan. And I have to tell you, the first time I ever met Ken, it was in 1975. We were in summer season in Skegness at a place called the Derbyshire Miners Holiday Centre. We were doing a review show there. And down the road on the pier was Ken Dodd.
Okay.
And Fran first went to see him down there, just went in and saw the show. We knew the stage manager there, a guy called Dennis, so he got Fran in to see it. And she came back and she said, "You have got to see Ken Dodd live." She said, "He is absolutely brilliant." And so we started going down there, and we met him, went round the dressing room and had chats with him. And we used to come out of the dressing room about 1:30 in the morning, and Ken had the keys to the pier. He would lock it all up.
Brilliant.
We'd walk down in darkness, and we were the only ones there. But fantastic! I mean, what a great guy! Such a knowledge of comedy.
For you,
it was just
Keith,
great.
For you being a comic as well, when you obviously met Ken Dodd and then you worked with Ken Dodd, it must have been a bit of like, wow, I'm working with Ken Dodd. I mean, it must have been like a hero of yours, yeah?
Yeah, he was, yeah, really. And I mean, that meeting in 75, we kept meeting up, as I say, and I said we were looking for a new agent, and he said, "Phone my agent, Dave Forrester, tell him I've put you in touch." And it finished up, we joined the Forrester George agency, which Ken was with, and he was responsible for that,
Oh, brilliant.
And so then we started working together a hell of a lot. And it was brilliant to stand in the wings and watch him, because he always had complete control of the audience. And people were hurting with laughter. And he used to actually shout to the audience and ask, "Point, do you give in?"
Brilliant.
Keith, it's Johnny here, Johnny Wall. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just listening to you saying that he was at the end of the pier with him talking, and you come away 1:30. Well, what did he used to talk about after the show? About the old days, about the show, or he just loved show business?
About show business in general, but about comedy, really, because he really did. He used to say about this, but it's absolutely true. He had what he called a giggle map of Great Britain. And he knew that's why his act was so strong, because his drummer, a great guy called Kenny Adams, who sadly is no longer with us now either, he used to have a notebook, and during the act, he'd make a note of any new gags that Ken put in. Right. And he always used to have a minimum of 3 or 4 new gags every show. And he'd put down how they went. And so Ken knew how every joke he did went in every part of the country.
Very clever.
And
Brilliant.
That's why he finished up with such a strong act, because only the good stuff remained,
Yeah.
And I mean, just that line, I've been reading, they've been quoting that line after the tax case. He said he didn't think he owed the inland revenue anything, because he lived at the seaside.
That's brilliant.
It's just a brilliant line, isn't it? And I mean, he got so much material out of that. He hated it, actually. People never forgot all that, and he wasn't really happy that it was remembered so, because he was acquitted. They didn't charge him with anything. And no, a truly lovely man and a very clever man. And we did used to talk about comedy a lot. And when we worked with him, he would stand in the wings and watch our act, and he'd suggest things. And he was just a very generous comedian. He
obviously loved comedy. There's another line he said, Keith. I think he said that some bloke 200 years ago thought, "I'll invent income tax," and he decided to make it 2p a pound. And he said, the only thing is, he said, "I still thought it was 2p a pound."
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant.
Definitely living in the past on that one. Yeah. Great. But we're going up, Fran and I are going up to his funeral on the 28th of March. Been speaking to Anne, his wife, or Lady Anne now, and we've been invited up to the funeral. So it will be a very sad occasion, but a great celebration of his life as well.
I think something you said there earlier, Keith, when Johnny was asking you about talking to Ken Dodd after. Yeah. We come to a function with you once, myself and Gary, the Water Rats, I think when you might have been King Rat. And we had the pleasure to speak to Ken Dodd, but he was one of those guys that had that unique way about him that he could make you feel like you was the only people in the room. He was genuinely talking to you and meant it. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean when I say that. He really...
Yeah, no, that's definitely right. And he used to do that with an audience as well. I mean, he used to talk about building a bridge from the stage to the audience.
Yeah.
And as you watched him, you did really feel he was working for you, you know? It was, and that's how he approached life in general with anyone. As you say, when he had a conversation with someone, you felt for that moment you were the most important person in there, you know?
It's like he genuinely had, you know what it's like sometimes in show business. There's some people like are looking past people to see who else they can see to him. But he genuinely was talking to you, and that was your moment with him. And if someone was waiting there, they would have to wait till he finished type. You know what I mean? He was genuinely speaking to you. But also, like I've seen loads of comments. I think Andy Eastwood, who worked with, who you know very well, and that. Yeah. And he said how much he learned from him, like you just said, and how much he wanted to help people. And I mean, that's right. Another good quality in a person, isn't it?
That's it, because I've worked with people in the past. They don't want you to get laughs, you know.
Of course,
if especially if you're in a pantomime with them or something, if you get an extra laugh, they can get annoyed. But Ken, he was all for it. He used to say to my brother and I, do so and so tonight. I say, well, we don't normally do that. No, but do it. Go on, do a bit more. He was always up for all those sorts of things. You know, he was great. And actually, we went to his 90th birthday party, which was held by the British Musical Society in London just last year. And he was asked what did he think of the modern day comics, and I thought it was a great reply. He said, well, they mean well.
Well, funny enough, before you come on air, it's another thing that we've talked on the show about a lot, and we was talking even off air, wasn't we, about it with Johnny and Gary, and talking about, we were saying, when Gary was saying earlier, obviously it's sad that everyone had passed away, but he's a guy that really does stand out. And he said, well, one thing he's always been there ever since we've known, hasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, he's always been there. But what we were saying was that the comedy does change. I think we've had a conversation with you about this. You know, it does change over the years. And his was so like witty and funny and that, but probably like, I suppose, if you say teenagers today, would they still get that type of comedy? It's quite interesting, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is, actually. I mean, obviously that Monday night, just after he died, the television, I kept turning channels and I watched the whole evening of Ken Dodd, because every channel was showing things about him. And although I suppose some of the stuff he did it would not be classed as PC now, it was still very funny. And I'd be interested to know if youngsters were watching that, what they thought of him, because he was crazy as well. I mean, some of the mad stuff he did, I just thought he was hilarious.
I thought watching back even to a couple of live gigs he had done a couple of years ago, and they've been on TV and you can watch them on YouTube or whatever. His comedy, even though he done his like little gags, but he was still, to me, he was a little bit. He was modern. He wasn't a one-liner comic. Here's a one-liner. Here's a one-liner. Here's a one-liner. He was a little bit alternative, I thought, as well. He would be. Yeah. He was pretty much. You could watch him now, and any age of people, and would still laugh at him. My sister was sitting there the other day laughing because she was obviously been brought up watching Ken Dodd. But even people, I think, at any age would find Ken Dodd funny.
He would bring some things that are going on at the moment into his act.
Yeah,
that's right. I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah, very true. That, and hopefully, youngsters today could still watch him. I used to say to any comic I worked with, if you haven't seen Ken Dodd live, go and see him live. Because although he did a lot of television, but to see him live was a whole new experience, Yeah. But you're right. I think he was a bit ahead of his time with a lot of that stuff. Actually, amazing.
I think last week again, watching one of the shows, he bringing stuff up to date. It was when Peter Mandelson was in trouble, I think, and he said, "I'm going to do a 4-hour show tonight." He said, "By then, Peter Mandelson might have paid for his mortgage." You know,
Yeah, see,
and he's probably read
great.
that in the paper that week, and
Clever.
thought,
Yeah.
I'll put it in. You know,
It must be, Keith,
Yeah.
as an entertainer yourself and a comic, it must be quite tough for you in one respect that you've had, obviously, some of your comedy heroes and people become your friends, you know, like Normal
Yeah.
Wisdom, when we lost Normal
Yeah.
Wisdom. And
Yeah.
and then you lose Ken Dodd. And it
Yeah.
must be a little bit tough, really, I suppose, deep down. I mean, there must be that sense of joy and happiness that you knew them and they were your friends, but there must be some real, a little tough sadness there for you.
Well,
as
there is actually, because as you say, like you said, we've grown up with someone like Ken Dodd, Norman Wisdom as well, and Max Bygraves we toured with, and
brilliant.
He was another one. You know, Bob Monkhouse I worked with, and great people. And I don't think we'll ever see their like again, because they came up at a certain time, most of them just after the war. And the whole country had a different feel about it, I suppose, and they just became household names, didn't they? And it's very sad that we're losing these great. And Tommy Cooper, I never worked with Tommy Cooper. I worked with his son in pantomime, who was a smashing guy as well, and he's not with us now either. His son was called Tom Henty. He used Tommy Cooper's wife's maiden name, so Henty was the family name. And you know, he used to tell me stories about his dad, and I desperately wanted to meet Tommy Cooper. And as closest I got to it, Tom Henty used to be on the phone. We were in Hull in pantomime years ago, and he used to be on the phone most evenings, shouting down the phone at his mum and dad. And he put the phone down. He said, "They're both." Well, I won't say what he said. They're both drunk.
Oh, brilliant! Brilliant. Yeah. Cool. Can you imagine that?
I mean, that great line of Tommy Cooper's, "I'm on a whiskey diet. I've already lost 3 days."
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
That is the
great comedy.
That is the
great
thing,
comedy.
Keith, as well with it, is that I think what I look at it as a little bit sad is obviously they've gone now. Ken's gone, and all the big greats are going. But I look now at television and comics who come through, and I can't pick any comic onto a young comic coming through in their 30s or late 20s who are going to be there in that as what them guys done. There's no one around. Right. To me, they're legends. Right? And maybe I'm losing the plot a little bit, because if you tell me there's a new comic on television and I'm watching them, they don't make me laugh. But I'll still. So I can't see these guys are going to have that effect on the television or media, and then what them legends did. Am I right, or am I just?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because these guys we're talking about were looked upon and are looked upon as national treasures, aren't they? You know, I know that's a term that's used a great deal, but they were really iconic people, and no, I don't think we will see their like again of that sort.
I think what's happened, hasn't it? And it'll be completely different, because it won't be how we know, like you tune in BBC One or 8 o'clock for the Palladium. Probably the youngsters now would be like he was a YouTube hero. Whether, like Gary said, they'll still be around in 20 years or 20 months. But you know, but they get millions, and it's all like no one. It's not telly, is it? It's like YouTube or the social media, and it's like you sort of scratch your head a bit, really. But I definitely think a lot of the comedy sort of wit isn't quite what it used to be. And I know things change, and you don't want to fall into the trap of being old and moany, do you, about it? But I think it's definitely if you can't laugh at it, you can't pretend, can you? If you don't find it funny.
No, that's right. The only thing you can say about the newer guys is they are having to write, and most of them write their own stuff, and they are having to rewrite all the time, because television obviously chews it all up, and they're all doing new material all the time, whereas the older guys, in a way, they honed their acts to perfection, and in the main kept doing the same stuff, though, as I say, Ken Dodd didn't, because he did keep putting in new gags all the time. But most of them, you know, were able to stick with tried and tested stuff, whereas the newer guys do keep changing all the time. So it's a much harder job now, I suppose. But I think you're right that most of the comics who are around now won't be talked about in the same way as we are talking about people like Ken Dodd now, you know.
You were talking about your wife earlier, Keith, going down to see Ken Dodd on her own.
Yeah.
And she come back and said, "You got to see this guy." To me, that must have been. She must have been so happy seeing him and thinking, "This guy is unbelievable." You know.
Well, she did.
I've got to. I can relate to that, because I remember my dad. He said to me one night. He said, I'm taking your mother, he said, down to the London Palladium. There's a new comedian on there from Scotland, and he does stories from the Bible. His name's Billy Connolly.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he come back, and it was exactly the same what you just said, but your wife, he just could not believe how good he was.
Yeah. Well, I remember, because Fran, obviously, seeing us work, my brother and I at the time, she knew quite a bit about comedy, but she came back and I remember her saying it. She said, Ken Dodd's act seems so random. I don't know how he remembers it all. There must be a structure to it, but I can't see what the structure is. And that's why she went back several times, and she said it is the same.
Sorry, Keith, but there's no structure to my chair at the moment.
He's just Johnny Walsh just collapsed off his chair. Talking of comedy thingy, but we'll let him sort out and get off the floor. No, but
hang on, you're doing visual comedy on radio.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Good job it's not a webcam.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
But no,
Brilliant.
You're right though, aren't you? And they must have magnificent minds and brains to be able to do that, because it's like,
because there was a structure to Ken's act, but only he knew what it was.
Yeah.
I remember when we did the first this radio series we did, Ken Dodd's Palace of Laughter. We did the first one, and there were two guys writing his opening monologue for it. And the very first show, he did everything they'd written for him. And when it finished, he said to them, right, more of the same next week, guys. They said, no, you've just done all the stuff we wrote for the whole series.
Oh, blimey.
And he put it all into the first show. He said, no, I want more. So just incredible, you know. Yeah. He was there'll never be another like him, will there? You know,
no,
amazing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So on the other front, you're always keeping busy. I know last time we was talking to, I think we was nagging you about you should do your book on all these guys and everything.
Yeah, should.
But you're keeping busy and
not too bad. Yeah, we're putting out we've got. Ben and I have got a show called Feel Good Factor, which the first half is like comedy and music, and the second half is where we do this name-dropping thing, talking about all the people we've worked with. So we're getting a few bookings in for that now. We're going back to Lytham in April, where we did pantomime last year. Actually, that was the first pantomime I've ever done last year that started and finished the same year. We started on the 7th of December and closed on the 30th of December. So when I did pantomime with Ken Dodd, we started in December and finished in March. So and that's not because it was Ken Dodd, that's just because it was so successful, you know. Pantomimes used to run those kind of times then. Amazing, but now they're getting shorter and shorter.
Well, Keith Simmons, do us I want to ask you one quickly. I'd love to. Do you want to say a big hello to Fran? I always like to say hello to Fran. You're lovely.
Yeah, thank you. She sends you all her love. She's a
lovely woman.
Great, thank you.
And we'll have a proper catch up soon and come back with some more stories. Yeah.
Brilliant, love to. Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks so much for coming on again. I know it's like we catch you in, but it's great because it's like people listening. It's nice to speak to somebody who knows someone quite well. And
thank you.
You know, I know he brought us lots of. It brought us happiness as watching him, and I know we brought you lots of happiness as being mostly a friend as well. And
listen, guys, been great to speak to you. And in my spare time, I do chair repairs.
Brilliant. I'll bring it back with me to Ken.
I tell you, it needs more. It needs more than repairs. I hope you can do arson.
Cheers, fellas. All the best.
We're going to see Keith Simmons, everybody. We're going to
Thanks a lot. Bye.
See you,
Bye.
Keith. We're going to love you and leave you on
what
this.
A great guy.
Yeah, this is a great song now, a summer one. This is Ken Dodd and Tears for Souvenirs.
We're going to have another guest, are we?
Yeah, we might as well have a double bubble.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so we had you get the old call going on. We'll ring him.
I wonder what he's going to say.
Before are you ringing now?
Well, I was going to, but I can hang on. I can hang on.
We had Keith Simmons on there. Like I say, Keith knew everyone. But this next man, we've got the fella who's I think is one of his heroes as well. Who's his mate.
He was
again at his 90th birthday the other year, and friend of the show, Duncan Norvelle. We'll try and get Duncan.
Chase me.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Let's chase him on the phone. See how we get on.
Yeah, see if he's there. Here he comes.
We'll talk about horse racing first.
Yeah. Here we go. Is he there?
Hello, Chase me.
Hey.
Here he is. Round of applause, Duncan Norvelle. Way. Hiya, Duncan.
This is
Is that Goodmaze and Co? Is it in the background?
We're all there. We're all here.
Are you all there?
This is Betfair here. We're checking up on how you've been doing on the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Duncan Norvelle.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Goodmaze.
Well, I would say I did two things close to my heart.
And what were they?
Well, think about it. When you say I've done me thingies in.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're too quick for me, Duncan.
I had a win, Duncan.
No,
I won on the Gold Cup.
Great festival. Great to watch on telly.
I watched it on the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and I put £5 on the winner. On the
Did you really?
Yeah, Native. I forget his name. Native something. Anyway, he won it. Led all the way, and I won a few quid.
Native River, was it?
Yeah, yes, it. And I won a few quid, so that was nice. I never win a lot lately. Duncan Norvelle, you've been a busy man. You've been out. I think you was gigging last night somewhere, wasn't you? Is that right? You had a great.
Yes, I was down at the which hotel was it? The Lancaster.
Brilliant.
Royal Lancaster Hotel. I was doing the Chelsea Lodge for the ladies' night.
Great.
Which was an honour to do it. And they asked me if I'd come along and present the toast to the ladies and do a small spot.
Lovely.
And I thought, well, I'm doing nothing, so I may as well go there. And it was a lovely hotel, and there were fabulous people, great audience, and they raised over 10,000 for different causes, which has got to be a good night.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
What was your opening gag or thing to him, Duncan? Because I know you're always great on the openings. What was the first thing you said to all them ladies?
Oh, dear.
Can you repeat it on air?
I said, I know what you're thinking, because I was in my wheelchair. I said, I know what you're thinking. And I'm looking at them, and I said, I know what you're thinking to yourselves. Yes, I do need a cleaner.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they were lovely. They were lovely. Really were.
So on the back of all that, the couple of weeks back, there was a show on, before we get round to, again, what we're going to speak about Mr. Dodd, but they talk about you for a second. There was a programme a couple of weeks ago about when comedy goes horribly wrong, and there was Mr. Norvelle sitting on there talking about Blind Date when you done the pilot and they showed clips of it. That must have been a good bit of feedback we saw on the Twitter from that.
Yeah, it was funny because they Track It TV rung me up and they said, would you like to do this show? And it's called When Comedy Goes Wrong. I said, yes. They said, oh, thank you, because we've got a clip of you doing Blind Date. And I said, well, that's amazing, because I've been asking people at TV studios, have they got any copies of it I could have, just to keep for myself, because it was such a big thing in my life. And I'd love to have the copy of it. And they said no. And I said, now you've rung me up and told me you've got it. And they said, well, yes, after 35 years, they've decided to release it. And we'd like you on the show to talk about a clip or two of it, why you didn't get it. And I said, okay, I'd love to. So I went down to the studio and recorded it. And that was a month before it came out on television.
Brilliant. It was great. It was brilliant as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I did do a good job of it at the time. And I thought I'd actually got the show at the time. But
they should have give you it, Duncan.
The powers to be thought I was a bit camp, which makes me laugh.
And who did they give it to recently?
Yeah, Paul O'Grady.
Yeah, our times change. It's really interesting.
If they get it Graham Norton, I would have had another stroke, I think. I was camp, but very funny with it, and always taking the mickey out of myself, nobody else. All my camp gags were based on myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do stupid things like, went to my sister's wedding the other day, and apparently on her wedding night, she took all her clothes off and jumped into bed. He took all his clothes off and put hers on and disappeared. Yeah, but I wait for laughter. And then I said, oh, but I found him. And I do stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, it was brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And one of my ones I used to love, I went to check in a hotel the other night, and I said, Duncan Norvelle, I'm doing a show here. And they said, oh, yes, we've got a room for you, but unfortunately you've got to share it with Scotchwood. I said, oh, okay. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, he keeps snoring. Nobody can go to sleep because he snores. I said, I'll be okay. In the morning, I come down. They said, how did you sleep, Mr. Norvelle? I said, fine. He said, did you keep me awake snoring? I said, no. I said, just walked across, tapped him on his shoulder, gave him a kiss on his cheek. He couldn't go to sleep all night. What do you mean?
Oh, brilliant.
And, those are the kind of things that gags I was doing.
Yeah. Just harmless.
In a nice way.
Yeah, of course. We was just talking to Keith Simmons about Ken Dodd, and we was talking about that humour, and we saying, obviously, we know you was big friends with Ken Dodd, and Harry would always help people, and he was an inspiration to people as well. So, when was your first link up with Ken Dodd, Duncan?
I used to see Ken every Sunday in Blackpool.
Brilliant.
He was doing the Grand Theatre on a Sunday, and I was working at the North Pier. And, of course, I'd go across and I'd be in the little bar near the stage door, and he had to come that way to get into the theatre. So I was always there, and I'd always say, hi, Ken, and then he'd say, hello, Duncan, how's it been going? Because he was only there on the Sunday and I was there for the week in Blackpool. And I'd say, yeah, Blackpool's been busy this week. We've had some great houses. Oh, he said, great. Are you popping in to see me later? I said, yeah, I'll see you later, Ken. Have a great show. And so I was always about, see it in the story.
Fantastic.
But Sundays. And then on his 80th birthday, he asked me to do his birthday for him.
Oh, brilliant!
Do the entertainment, which was fabulous. Brilliant. And that was in Liverpool at a hotel. It was called the Ship or something. It was like a boat. You were in a boat, and it was shaped like a boat. The room was, and it was fabulous. And he had the band on the deck upstairs. There was like a balcony with a 5-piece band on. And everybody, all the speakers worked from the table, talking about Ken. But when I did my spot, there were 2 different sets of staircases to get up to this balcony, one going up and the other one coming down the other side. And I thought, just to be different, instead of doing my act at the table, I said, does anybody mind if I go to the staircase? And they said no, and I got a radio mic. And I hadn't had the stroke, obviously. And I said, right. I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start on the first step. And every time I tell a gag that you laugh at, I'm going to go up a run. And if you don't laugh, I'll come down a run. So I told this gag, and it got a real good laugh. And I went up 2 runs. I said, oh, that's worth 2 runs. Then I told this gag on purpose that wasn't funny. And then I said, oh, that was a bad one, so I'll come down and run. So actually, I'd only gone 1 step up, and there's about 20 steps.
Clever, yeah.
So then I tell another gag that's hilarious. And I got 4 runs, and I said, oh, I'm going up 4 runs now. And I'm thinking, I've been given 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, oh, hang on, you've been on about 12 now. And then I did another gag. And another gag, and I kept going up the run, and I got to the last run, and then I would have made it. And I told this gag, and nobody laughed, so I come right down to the bottom, and I turned around and I said, this is no good, Ken. I'll never get to the top like you have.
Brilliant, clever.
I said, thanks for inviting me. And everybody stood up, and Ken Dodd come up to me afterwards, and he says, you're a wonderful comedian. He says, I love how you think on your feet. He said, don't ever lose that. He said, I could tell you'd made that up and it worked fabulous. You were so different to everybody else.
True, isn't it? Yeah,
That's
that's
and I thought it was a great compliment. And we've stayed great friends ever since, and his wife Anne, bless her.
Yeah.
I rung her the other day to see how she was coping, and she's amazed by the public, and all the wonderful things and cards she's received and flowers.
I bet.
And
Yeah.
she said to me, somebody even pushed a cucumber through their letterbox.
Oh, really?
Of the house, because he used to do that gag.
Yeah.
What a wonderful day, he said, to wake up in the morning through somebody's letterbox and saying the Martians have landed.
Brilliant. It's great, isn't it? Great.
And somebody had done that.
Oh, really?
Because he lived in Notty Ash in the same house he was born in.
Yeah, and it's funny because all that Notty Ash, I didn't really know this till a couple of years ago. I thought it was all made up. I thought Notty Ash was a made up place. I actually never knew. And he lived in the same house, didn't he? That he was born in and lived as a kid till he died. Amazing.
Yeah, I knew it was there, but I'd never actually been. And one night I was doing a club in Notty Ash. And it was the Gala Bingo, or was it Mecca? It might have been Mecca Bingo Hall. And I got lost, and I actually went down this road that said "Welcome to Notty Ash" on it. And I thought, oh, this is where all the Diddy men are, and that. But they didn't come out. It was a great feeling going down there, knowing somewhere along here Ken Dodd lives,
Like fantasy world, Duncan, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Like a fantasy world, made up.
Was you at Ken Dodd's 90th? Because that wasn't that long ago, Duncan, was it?
Yes, I went.
Yeah,
Lynn and I.
And he was really quite well, wasn't he? Up to
very well.
Yeah. Amazing how he had that. We were saying earlier to do comedy all them years, to the age of 90 is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I got invited because I did his 80th. I did the cabaret. This time I was invited just to come and enjoy the evening,
Yeah.
So Lynn and I went up, and obviously Ken got up and did a speech, and he was so funny. He's still got all the time in it, and the memory, the recall of the man was incredible. And you would not have thought there was anything wrong with him, bless him.
No, that's amazing.
He was great. So, whether he was hiding it a little bit.
Yeah, it must have been.
Nobody really knows apart from his partner, I suppose.
It must have been a bit of a double blow for then in this week because you had Ken Dodd. And then Jim Bowen as well was a friend of yours as well. I mean, both in day after, pretty much within 48 hours. So,
Jim Bowen, I first met Jim in Manchester at the Comedy Store, and we'd put a night on of it was the Comedy Festival up there for a week they have in November in Manchester. And Mick Miller, a good friend of mine, said, do you fancy doing it with me, Duncan, and Jim Bowen? I said, yeah, it'd be great. He said, there won't be a lot of money in it, but do you fancy doing it? I said, yeah, okay, I've never worked at a Comedy Store. He says, oh, I'm sure you'll be okay. I says, all right. So we all get up there, me, Mick and Jim, and we're in the dressing room. Now, we're not arguing, but we're thinking, who's going to go first with this lot and who's going to get last? More like, And I said, well, I don't know. I said, do you want me to go on first and get them a bit warmed up and see what happens, and you two can judge it between yourselves? And Jim said, well, I'll go on in the middle, and Mick, you've done Comedy Stores before, you go on last. He says, okay. Well, I went out there, and I was quite different, I suppose, to a lot of the younger generation, and I went down well. They loved it. I did all the impressions and jokes, and the catchphrase chased me and everything. They loved all that. And I thought, oh, that's great. And I thought to myself, wonder what Jim's going to do. Well, he come on and he told a wonderful story about when he was doing Bullseye. And he he'd got this couple playing, and one was in a wheelchair, bless him, and the other guy was very intelligent, and he was in the wheelchair. He was a very intelligent man. And the other guy was the dart player, and he obviously had played down his local pub quite a bit because he was a seriously good player. So Jim says, right, let's go on. They got through to the final. Let's go on Bully's board. And, and he says, you get nothing for two in the bed and all this. And he says, and in one, we've got a fridge freezer and all that. Anyway, this dart player gets all the prizes. And because this guy's answered all the questions right. And so he gets his 6 arrows and he clears up the board. And he gets bullseye as well, gets Bully's star prize. And they've won £400, I think, and the Bully trophy. And Jim Bowen says, right, lads, right. Now, your money's safe. You've got your £400, that's safe. And you've got all the prizes. Let's look through them. You've got this coffee maker. You've got a lawnmower. And I'm thinking to myself, when he's telling this story, well, where's it going? And then Jim says, in my earpiece, I'd got the director upstairs saying, don't let them go for the star prize. Make them take the prizes and the money. Don't make them go for the star prize. And he's telling them, now, look, lads, I've gone through all the prizes, 6 magnificent prizes, including Bully's star prize. You've got the 27-inch screen TV, smashing super great. Now, what do you want to do? Do you want to gamble all them prizes and the money for tonight's star prize behind the Bully? What do you want to do? It's 6 arrows, 3 for the non-dart player, 3 for the dart player, 101 or more. Or do you want to keep the money, kept stressing the money, £420 and your prizes? Do you want to keep your money, lads? And this guy in the wheelchair, he said, no, Jim, we've had a lovely day and we're going to take the gamble. And this guy upstairs in Jim's earpiece says, well, good luck with this one. And he went forward. It says non-dart player first, and the gentleman in the wheelchair scored 319, got 57.
Blimey.
And which was an excellent start. And then Jim said, right, you need 44 or more, or whatever it was. And he says, for Bully's star prize. And they said, oh, Jim, if he gets this. Anyway, he throws the first dart and it goes in treble 20. And he says, you've won the star prize. And the screen opens up, and it's a skiing holiday for 2. And of course, this poor guy's in a wheelchair.
No.
And Jim goes, smashing super great. Now you're going out to wherever it was. And he says, and you've got a week's holiday. And you'll be skiing every day. We've got you an instructor. So we've got you an instructor. And this guy in the wheelchair is looking up at him. And he says, Tony, don't worry, Tony. You can always watch him. That's exactly what he said.
Wow. Brilliant. Good story.
Jim Bowen did this story, and the place went in an uproar.
Brilliant.
Everybody... And he got it word perfect because it did happen.
Gary was saying earlier, Duncan. Sorry, interrupting you. Gary was saying earlier you scored as a celebrity. Was you the highest scorer darts player on there? Highest scoring darts player?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I threw for charity. They had a celebrity each week.
Yeah.
Threw for charity. Yeah, I went on and did it in about 86, something like that. I wore a yellow safari suit.
It's on YouTube, I think, and it's brilliant.
Yeah,
on YouTube. It's brilliant.
It's had thousands of hits, and I come on and I come up to Jim and I go, chase me and run off. And he says, a smashing to have you here, Duncan, super great. Now you're throwing for charity, and we double every point for charity.
Yeah.
I said, oh, thanks. And I went to the board, and the first one come out the board, because I got 3 practice darts. And the Tony Green, who was doing the scoring, he wouldn't bend down to pick it up.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
It was so funny.
Yeah, and that's what it was. A great programme, wasn't it? It's a real...
I kept saying, go on, chase for Tony.
Yeah.
Right, old
and I ended up getting 100 and... I think it was 173 or 163 in 9 darts.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Well, it's rubbish, really.
It is a bit rubbish, but still good, because the others must have been really rubbish.
But it was all right for a celebrity who couldn't see that good.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, listen,
great memories, Duncan. Great memories.
Yeah, great memories of Jim as well as Ken.
So,
I mean, those type of people, you'll never get the great times like that again,
No, it's very different, isn't it? It's very different now.
Yeah, it was great for the time, and
of course it is.
as time moves on. But I looked at Ken's last performance when I seen him, and he was still the funniest person I've seen.
Yeah. No, he was amazing.
And he never swore.
No, takes some doing.
He never had to swear. He never had to swear. He was just so funny without swearing.
Just a natural,
I think that's what he liked about me,
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely.
I don't have to swear. I can go a bit saucy, but only with the right crowds,
Of course.
But bar that, if there's any children in, I'm straight away.
No. And that's
clean as a whistle.
Very, very, very difficult to do without being. Just before we shoot off, though, we must mention as well that Duncan's album "Music from My Life" is available for downloads,
iTunes,
and we'll be having some hard copies soon that I know people will be able to order up. So it's always a pleasure talking to you, Duncan, and say hello to the lovely Lynn.
Yeah, thanks, Dunk, for coming on again and sharing all your
Gary.
stories. And always a pleasure, Dunk. And we'll see you soon. Definitely,
cheers, Duncan.
Yeah.
Johnny.
Yeah, cheers.
Ciao,
You two take care. Okay, bye.
Cheers,
Dunk.
Bye, Duncan.
mate.
There we go. That was a Duncan Norvelle live on Mad Wasp Radio. We'll see you later on.